There's a creator who has popped up on my feed from time to time, and I've noticed a couple of odd takes, so I thought I'd do a little digging. And honestly, what I found was quite shocking. She's a British content creator. Let's just say we have a lot in common. She also has a husband. She's a YouTuber as well. There's a lot to say that we have in common, okay? However, what we don't have in common are our political views. Alexis Blake is a self-defined centralist who likes to listen to all sides of the conversation.
I can see how someone could agree with both points of this.
So today we're going to be taking a look at some of those takes, and we're going to make up our own minds as to what we think about them.
This just proves that you can have different opinions to people on certain things, but having that conversation is so much more valuable, and I think a lot more is accomplished from that than when certain people have tried to drag me down because one of my opinions is different to theirs.
Now, I will say that this is probably going to look a lot longer than my normal videos, and so the style is probably going to also be quite different. I want to be careful. I want to be educated in my responses. I don't want to be cruel, okay? There is an element of Alexis Blake's content that to me is borderline dangerous, or at the very least could push people further down the far right pipeline than they envision by clicking on a couple of her videos. So bear with me. Let's have a conversation, as Alexis herself says she likes to do.
Like always, if you disagree with some of the things I said in this video, that's great, that's normal, it's healthy, it's human. Let's have a conversation in the comments below.
Trigger warning: transphobia, misogyny, internalized transphobia, internalized misogyny, fascism, racism. Let's take a look at some of her centralist takes to start.
There's some parts of it I'm not so proud of, and some bits not as connected with, like, you know, when you see like the activists were like,
Centralist takes. Now, what do I mean by that is not left-leaning, not right-leaning, but kind of an independent thinking. Basically her personal opinions and nothing too one-sided. And let's see if we can find any patterns from the get-go, but for now I'm going to try and be as fair as I can. Alexis Blake reacting to Blair White, who is a popular overtly right-wing trans woman in the US, and Blair White is actually reacting to another creator who's more, I would say, more progressive, more on the left. So this should be a perfect example of us seeing how centralist Alexis is.
You may remember last time we did this, there was a woke trans activist who made a TikTok about me saying I'm a horrible representation of trans people.
Blair White is another one of those ultra privileged trans people that I will never understand, because she hasn't struggled like most of us trans people have struggled, and so she just doesn't fully understand. She has a lot of really problematic views, and why I think she's worse than Caitlyn Jenner is because she spreads misinformation, like literally fake news. She also, you know, just has like really strong opinions that are very transphobic, that are very problematic, that are very racist, that are very ableist, and that are very classist. And I think that she's the worst representation of what a trans person can be.
And you may also recognize that very same TikToker as the trans woman who was banned from the White House for stripping. So, you know, I'm not going to say that's God. I'm not going to say that's karma, but what I am going to say is I paid for a voodoo priestess to make something really bad happen to you.
So first and foremost, let's just talk about what the progressive TikToker said. She just critiqued Blair White for a number of valid reasons. Her racism, her internalized transphobia, and nothing, just to react on the reaction, but like Blair White didn't deny any of those things. And the two of them even reacting physically, there was no like head shaking. There was no like, no, that's not me. Just kind of... me admission by not saying anything. So let's see what Alexa says.
I think I've actually seen that TikToker before online. I don't know where, but the face is very familiar. But I think that's kind of funny, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I know I shouldn't, like, she's just some of the things, like where her brain goes with it, I just don't know how she comes up with it. I don't know. I just find it quite funny. But yeah, that's not a great look, is it? Being naked at the White House. Why would you do that? What kind of like political... I don't understand that.
So again, no commenting at all on anything Blair White actually said. In fact, Blair White just mentioned about how that particular trans creator took off her top at the White House, which, yes, was very stupid. That two wrongs don't make a right, though. We all get taught that at very young ages. So we don't actually get to hear her opinion on Blair White's racism, transphobia, or anything like that. Okay, so let's try another one.
I'm an idiot. I'm a f***ing idiot.
You know, I've been saying this. Can cool people please take back colored hair? Because every time I see someone with green hair and Blair White in the tags, I just know it's going to be negative. Like, I should not be able to just tell via your hair color that you're a non-binary communist who snorts their antidepressants, but I can, and that's an issue.
The TikTok was annoying. That's obvious. It's just someone just doing their own thing, shouting, swearing, whatever. But the response, like, and the stereotype that is being created for non-binary people to have green, blue hair, and then she just clicks straight onto that. Do I agree? Like, there seemingly is a lot of non-binary people with brightly coloured hair, so that it's not necessarily a stereotype. I think it's something that we do see. But then some of the things, just like the antidepressants and things, I'm a bit like, oh.
And it's here that we get our first absolutely centralist take. She doesn't deny anything that Blair White says. In fact, she very much agrees with the stereotype that non-binary people have a lot of blue hair. But then she does, to some extent, say that maybe Blair White does go too far with what she says. No critique of whether what she's saying is fair or true or valid or insulting or transphobic or anything. Just maybe she goes too far with what she does say. But hey, we're in the easy round. Let's not be too hard on her. Let's take a look at some of her recent stuff, because I will be honest. One of the reasons why we're here is that her recent stuff is much more centralist at its heart. Therein lies the danger, but hey, we're skipping ahead a bit. Let's look at this next video.
Dylan recently announced on social media that she's reprising the role of Anne Boleyn in said musical from February the 16th on Broadway in New York. And this has sparked some controversy on social media, with some people super for it and some people super against it.
So here we have Alexis discussing Dylan Mulvaney being the role of Anne Boleyn. Now, this is old news, so I'm not going to cover exactly what happened, but listen to Alexis's excuse for why it's okay that Dylan play Anne Boleyn.
Dylan Mulvaney, a talented twink in 2026, is going to be playing Anne Boleyn, one of the most important and influential women from English history, whose femaleness was utterly and completely endogenous to her role in history. She couldn't have been any of the things that she was if she'd just been a dude. I am now without words.
My problem with this person who's talking about Dylan is I try to understand where she's coming from about the role and Anne Boleyn obviously being a biological woman throughout history. But I just want to re-emphasize again, this isn't a musical based on historical fact. There is undertones of transphobia in this video. I'm really sorry to say. If you agree with the video, that's your opinion. I might just have a different one. Calling Dylan a twink, which is a skinny, young, feminine gay man, and then calling Dylan a dude, I just don't... You lose me when you argue that way. When you argue your point and you go to that sort of narrative, I tap out and I can't fully understand. In the whole thing of trans women not being able to play a biological woman, it's not an accurate storytelling. It's not history. It's glazing over history with a feminist point of view, with some fabulous pop songs in it. I don't have an issue personally with it.
Now, for you wise people in the audience there, you will have noticed that it's not actually an argument of trans women can play female characters, get over yourself. Just like we've had a large amount of men playing trans women, that people just play the role they want to play. Unless it's specifically a minority or an oppressed group that don't have as much representation, which I'm sorry, cis women is not one of. Anne Boleyn being played by a trans woman is actually more representation for the trans community, and it gives trans women, actors and people in that industry far more chance to play a role that they wouldn't used to get a chance of. Get over yourselves. No. Alexis's take is actually it's fine because it's not a historically accurate representation of Anne Boleyn, which again isn't quite a right-wing talking point of kill all trans women, but it's not quite left either of, hey, let them play what they want to do. Let trans women do what they want to do. They're people too. It's nice and delicately in the centre. I would even go as far as to say it's appeasing to anyone that leans on the right, that doesn't want to see a trans person playing a female role. And it's more of an appeasement of, it's okay, it's not meant to be historically accurate. Don't worry about it, okay? It won't happen much. Shh, don't worry.
Also, another big point I want to point out, if Dylan was purely only casting it because she's trans and her name gets everyone talking. If that was the only reason, I would have a problem with it, because that's not a talented performer getting input into something what people work years for, years and years training in singing, dancing and acting to get to these roles, and most people will never get to Broadway. But Dylan is a musical theatre trained person. She was on Broadway before transition in the touring musical Book of Mormon, so she has had that experience. I would imagine she went through a full casting process just like everyone else. I understand why people might have doubts about it, but with all the facts of knowing that it's not a historical musical, it's a trans woman who is going to bring bums to seats, which is what they ultimately want. It's a trans woman who is trained in musical theatre. Those sorts of points aligned for me, and that's why I'm sort of like, okay, fair.
But what we do have is an example of meritocracy. Her example is that, well, with Dylan Mulvaney, she is actually in the industry. She's very good at what she does. So it makes sense that she is cast in this role. It's fair, if anything, because she has probably gone through the same audition process as others, etc., etc. Remember that when we get to the topic of trans women in sports and being good at something, being innately good at something, perhaps some may argue. Let's see where she stands with that particular conversation.
For anyone transitioning from male to female, female to male, whatever. Number one, must be 18 years or older.
First and foremost, I think it's down to the parents. At the end of the day, they're the parents of that child.
You must absolutely do everything in your power to use a one-stall bathroom. Number 6, you cannot play in sports in the gender that you want to be. Ever. Period.
The one stall thing, I'm going to disagree. It's not always possible. In the sport thing, again, I've always said, and I'm still in the same mindset, that a trans woman competing in a physical sport is unfair on biological women because we have an unfair advantage once we've gone through the full male puberty. So if it's like running, swimming, something like that. If it's chess or something like that, I don't see as much of an issue there because that's not as much to do with physical strength.
And if you try harder to look the gender you want to be, you won't get misgendered.
Ooh, we can all do like makeup, hair and clothes, fair enough. That's not too expensive. But surgery-wise and people's natural biology and how we're born, sometimes passing isn't a possibility for everyone. Again, I think it's just a bit more nuanced.
She says, as ever the centralist, that she can understand that some trans women would have a physical advantage against cisgendered women, so she can't get behind them in contact sports. However, when it comes to games like chess, which I think it was the FIDE did actually ban trans women from playing chess a couple of years ago. I covered it on this channel. She can't get behind that. And see, this is the issue with being a centralist, isn't it, Alexis? You didn't get to choose, did you? You didn't get to say, hey, stop there, actually. I think it's unfair from this point onwards. No, the decisions were made outside of your control, weren't they? And earlier in the video, we literally discussed when you said about Dylan Mulvaney being cast as Anne Boleyn was fair because she's good at her job. Well, why is the same not for Leah Thomas? Why doesn't the same count for trans women that have been doing sport their whole lives? They transitioned and now they're still doing the same job. Why does suddenly that become a disadvantage? Who's to say that Dylan Mulvaney being so good in the arts and dance and singing isn't actually a disadvantage, and that she has too much of an advantage against her cisgendered counterparts at playing Anne Boleyn because she's too sporty? Her lung capacity is just too large that she can dance longer than cisgender women, so it's actually unfair. If trans women can't play chess, why should they be able to dance on stage with other cisgender women? Hey, there could be an injury, there could be an accident. You see where I'm going with this? None of it makes sense because it's pure bigotry, and we should be able to understand that and call it out. Every single one of them is a right-wing talking point. It's not necessarily backed by science. I will give it to Alexis. A lot of these points, she's saying, hey, it's more nuanced than that. It's more difficult than that. Ever the centrist. Well done, Alexis. However, a few things do stand out to me.
You absolutely positively must be mentally okay with knowing and accepting the fact that you will always be the biological gender you were born. Period. End of story.
I think what she's saying here is you'll always be the biological sex that you're born as, which is very factually true. Gender is how society perceives as our biological sex, is how we come into this world. And I am very aware, under no illusions, I'm always going to be a biological male, yes. But the gender that I present as in the way that society sees me now is as a woman, but that makes me a trans woman.
Cannot and will not get upset when you get misgendered, because if you get misgendered, quote unquote, and we all know what that means, you're technically not being misgendered, because you can only be one gender, and if people call you the gender that you were born when you're trying to present the other gender, they technically didn't misgender you.
To say you cannot get upset, I'm not sure if I fully agree there. To pop off and scream at someone if they accidentally misgender you when they don't know that you're trans and are transitioning, I think, yeah, that's too far. And I've always sort of thought that. But I think it's a little bit more nuanced.
If you do get upset about it, realize that that's your problem. They're not transphobic.
She doesn't actually understand that a lot of what is being said is very much a right-wing talking point. And that's the danger. If we don't understand what's being fed by the right, what is a conservative and right-leaning point compared to its left-leaning counterpart, then how can we truly be centralist in this? Won't we just be gobbling up what they say and just end things on, well, hey, that's your opinion and you're entitled to it? But it's more nuanced than that. I think actually if you want to be a centralist, you should understand both sides of the argument so that you can understand where someone's talking point is. Are they leaning on the right? Are they far right? How can you truly know you're in the centre if you don't know your left from right? Oh, I ate with that. Sex is very much undeniable. Yes, we're all born in a certain way and there are physical elements to that. Gender is a social construct as we know it. Within biology and science, there is obviously a large majority of people born female or male, using generalized terms here, but you cannot deny that people with a mix of chromosomes, intersex, exist. Those people exist. Now, it might just be one in a few hundred or whatever, but they exist as an anomaly, physically. That is science that you cannot deny. You can say there is a generalization of boy and girl, male or female. I would agree with you. But you cannot deny the existence of at least one anomaly. However, going back to the social constructs of gender, we don't really hear that same anomaly accounted for, do we? How many baby showers have you gone to where it's a boy, it's a girl, or it's an intersex person that is a very much a person in society, but a gender that's not often accounted for? I mean, you could argue they're meant to wear the yellow-coloured baby clothes, but hey, we're splitting straws here. Now, the reason I bring this up is not to hold Alexis Blake to an accountability that is pretty much unknown by most people, but it's to say that if you don't understand that difference, maybe we don't be talking about it. Because I tell you who also don't understand that difference, or don't want to understand that difference, more importantly, TERFs on the right. J.K. Rowling, for start. When faced with the understanding that some people have different chromosomes than what they perceive themselves to have by the biological gender they were born under, they deny that fact. They say, oh, that doesn't count. They throw that under the rug. And if you're going to be a centralist that can listen to both sides of the argument and add nuance, it's more nuanced, maybe you should be able to give that nuance. The correlation of cisgender people, that by definition means someone that was born in the same gender that they define as. Biological sex and gender match. But we have trans people where their biological sex and gender don't match. So they do various steps that they can or choose to align themselves, align their gender and biological sex, or we have an umbrella of colours in between. Funny that, maybe there's a reason. Maybe there's potentially a few terms we could use for people that don't fall into these two categories. Maybe if they don't live on the binary scale of male or female, that there's somewhere they should be happily represented. Oh yes, there is non-binary folk. I can't help but feel that it's an active choice to not understand those things as well. Again, I can't help but get ahead of myself. Let's watch a couple more of her centralist takes before we get to the good stuff. Alexis Blake also often reacts to Lily Tino. Trans people, we go for a journey, and not everyone is at the end result of that journey at the same time. That'd be physically impossible. But as trans people, we're all aware of that journey, so we should be able to have the same understanding of some people that are not all the way there, and to not judge them for that situation. Alexis Blake is sadly very much doing this to Lily Tino. She has an innate disdain for her. In certain videos, she doesn't even gender her correctly.
Lily Tino has recently undergone FFS, facial feminization surgery, or so they are saying on their TikTok, and I will explain more in a moment as to what I mean.
Lily Tino, a very controversial person on TikTok, yes, understandably. I think she's a bit of a menace, actually.
I'm really excited. I'm very nervous because this is by far the craziest, not craziest, but, you know, like most intense surgery I've had. When I had my cake pops removed, I was nervous, but like, you don't look different after you get your cake pops removed. Sorry. Not the yawn.
Girl, you sat down and you picked this video and you're reacting to it. And your response is to yawn? Like, what the... don't react to it. Choose another video. Actually come up with something original to say, heaven forbid. Like, why are you yawning to your own reaction? That's crazy. That's hilarious to me.
If Lily got all of those surgeries, which they were just describing, we're talking like a 7 to 10 hour procedure time, like big surgery by the looks of things. This clip here, like the face, like the like, and then they bounced the cane, and then they were like, aha, look at me, I have had my surgery. It was giving smug, and it's just, I know, like, I'm trying to stay like neutral and not like be hypercritical, but there was something about it here. Up here, the brow bone seems to be a lot smoother. Could that have been the surgery? However, I'm not like a photo analyst, so maybe someone in the comments can give us more insight into this, but I've seen like Photoshop fail videos. Could Lily have photoshopped this photo to make the brow bone look worse so that the after looked better? Even if Lily did Photoshop that photo, that forehead looks like facial feminization surgeryed forehead.
Again, I will give it to Alexis to an extent. There is very much her trying to take both sides of the argument into consideration. She says to herself, no, I believe that Lily did get FFS because of this and that and certain things. But then she watches a certain content creator that says it was photoshopped and it's all fake and Lily Tino isn't actually transgender. It's all for money and clicks and views and rage bait. And she says, oh, maybe, I don't know. It could be both.
Lily and people like Jeffrey Marsh, I can't remember that other guy with the blonde hair that used to get on live all the time. Like, they are really who is the biggest threats to the LGBTQ community. This was not a facial feminization surgery or whatever Lily claimed for it to be. I think it was something with the forehead and maybe hair restoration. I don't know. So Lily can pretend to be trans still and scam the people on the internet. Lily Tino needs to be shut down on this app.
I kind of understand where this creator's coming from. I do agree that people like Lily Tino and their rhetoric and the way that they're presenting themselves to the world, their opinions, their views, how they're making their videos, why they're making videos, the rage bait element of their videos, that is damaging to the trans community. And you all know that I say that. Did you notice as well, though, one thing I will call myself out on, because I'm always here to call myself out, because if we say something wrong or something like that, I should always own up to it. I said I think they've had the full surgery, but I only spoke about mainly the forehead. Apparently Lily had this done, this done, this done, this done, but I didn't comment on that because I didn't really see much of a change in those things. I just saw the forehead, so maybe I was just taking a leap of faith and believing the best in people, which I do try and do sometimes.
To take away Lily's ability to define herself as what she is outright insulting. Call her what she is. Call her a menace to society. Say that she shouldn't have a platform on TikTok. Have your opinions of her. But don't eat into the idea that she's not actually a trans woman. This is all an act. Because that's an offensive thing to say. It's eating into a right-wing talking point. This is the problem with centralism, isn't it? When you find yourself smack bang in the middle and you're listening to someone that's talking out of their arse and listening to someone that has done nothing wrong in this really other than being a bit rage baity, and you find yourself in the centre, well, if the right go further right, then you'll get pulled right-wing, hun, aren't you? Now, last but not least, we have Alexis Blake and her husband, Liam Blake, at Trans Pride in 2025. Now, I've been to this festival before I moved to Japan every year. Wonderful protest as well. It's a protest. I remember the original person that created the event, Lucia. Love her. Keep doing what you're doing, hun. And this festival, this pride event, this protest is very much a place that we used to fight for our rights and talk about the injustices being done unto us. And anyone that attends that event is aware of that, in my opinion. It's not hidden to be a protest, is kind of what I'm saying.
We all have different walks of life, but everyone here has one message, and that's just, we're just human beings.
We're just human beings.
That's what I've taken anyway.
Whether you're trans, whether you're not trans, it doesn't matter. We're all here. There's so many different types of people.
It's
from
beautiful.
All walks of life, you know. It's quite overwhelming actually, but in the best possible way.
It's been peaceful, it's been calm, there's
no
been
trouble
no
so
violence,
far.
so it's been fabulous.
And here Alexis and Liam interview a few people and they ask their opinion. They, for the most part, seem very fair, very much enjoying the atmosphere of the day, which if you've been, you'll know is an amazing, empowering, safe and wonderful place. But I couldn't help but hear a certain word come out of Alexis's mouth, which perked my ears up and is one of the reasons why we're here now. One of.
But, you know, we've got to stop fueling the beast.
That the negativity on social media from, say, trans extremists or loud trans activists or politicians, do you think that is how we got to where we are now? Or do you think that's just sort of been a little part of it?
I think that's a part of it. I just think there's undercurrents through a lot of different groups of people where people are getting more and more frustrated that people are trying to take their rights away, and that bubbles over into people
getting angry
and taking one side or another side.
It's always a battle. I think we're just human beings. Like, for me, the most important message of today is whether we don't always agree with everyone, we don't always like everyone, we're all just human beings. We just want to live our lives. I just want to pee in peace. That's all I want, and that's what I hope can come in the next 12 months.
Trans activists. And what does that mean? Extreme trans activists.
What word best describes your current relationship with the LGBT alphabet? I'm just going to say alphabet.
Yeah, it's getting a bit long.
Yeah, with LGBT alphabet community.
There's some parts of it I'm not so proud of, and some bits not as connected with. Like, you know, when you see like the activists who are like, I'm like, oh no, calm. Like, so I disconnect in those moments. So I don't know.
You disconnect from the shouty activism.
The loud ones, yeah.
What's it like extreme activism?
Yeah, extremists.
Yeah. Like extreme activism, I just don't have no place for that.
No,
I don't have time for that.
I think generally there was a community as a whole. Like, that's the non-screamy ones. I think they were connected.
We're connected as a whole. I mean,
give me my rights back. I don't know. What could that possibly be? Well, let's take a little look into the history of Alexis Blake. Let's go into her backlog of content, and I'll tell you exactly what she means by extreme trans activist, and I will explain how Alexis Blake is, for all intents and purposes, as much as she would like to self-define as a centralist, is far from it. I would even go as far as to say that the opinions she's putting out are so far down the right that she is the British equivalent of Blair White, and an unsafe situation that people could easily find her content, could easily gobble up a few of her videos and not realise that they are following down the pipeline to outright fascistic views. And with everything going on in the world, it will be interesting to see her opinions on the UK Supreme Court defining trans women as not women. Especially a few years ago, it would be interesting to see her opinions on J.K. Rowling and her transphobia. Oh, it's interesting indeed. Anyway, the easy round is over. Let's look exactly into who Alexis Blake truly is.
I've been called TERF before. For any of those,
which I don't think that really makes.
I have been called
sense.
It though.
When I tell you I have more notes for this video than I've ever had for anything I've ever made, and I used to think I was making video essays. This is probably the biggest video I've ever made. So let's get into it, shall we? Now, sadly, that was the easy round. Next, I'm going to give you a wider set of examples as to exactly where Alexis Blake stands on certain issues. And sadly, I'm going to reinstate the trigger warning from before. This is where we get into the transphobia, honestly, outright racism and misogyny. In a video called Calling Out the Trans Community as a Trans Woman, Alexis Blake makes her thoughts abundantly clear.
I am getting increasingly disappointed in the trans community. More specifically, a small minority of trans individuals that are spreading misinformation, they're attacking women and womanhood, and giving trans people a really bad reputation when there is so many positive trans role models in social media and celebrities that are getting overshadowed by all the loud voices that are creating such a negative image for us.
And to me, this is where she moves from being a centralist to very much being part of the right wing. These are right-wing talking points, and if they were said by a TERF, we would consider that TERF far right. So why does a different rule apply?
Birther, chest feeder and a womb carrier. I completely disagree with these points. Women are allowed to be called what women want. They get the right to choose how people refer to them, their labels. If you are uncomfortable with being called cisgender, that doesn't make you transphobic. That just means you are uncomfortable with that terminology, and that's fine.
Honestly, when Alexis talks about disliking the terms birthing woman and stuff, I start to wonder if J.K. Rowling actually gets her talking points from Alexis. The reason those terms exist is because there are people in society that don't adhere to male or female. That isn't hard to admit. We know they exist and we can't deny their existence. So when you meet someone and you assume that they are female, you are not always correct. I'm sorry. It's not just a matter of someone's got long hair and wearing makeup, so they must be a woman. It's not that simple. And even as a trans woman trying to fit in within that gender, you still have to be aware of the same thing everyone else is. It doesn't take away from cis women because of that terminology existing. You can very much just say, I'm a woman, you can call me a woman. That's not going to cause any problems, is it? It boggles my mind that people have such a problem with pronouns when we have a different name for almost every person in our lives. It is not hard. It really isn't hard. It's a lack of willingness to understand and to want to comprehend someone's pronouns. You get given like 2 or 3 names per person you meet, and you can grasp a few of those.
It feels like some trans women, to validate their existence, they are trying to erase women and womanhood. And that is not okay when a lot of women have stood by our side and supported us to get us the rights that we've got today. Let me remind everyone as well that it wasn't even 20 years ago in the UK where you couldn't transition genders legally. So we're on a very fine line of progression and reverting backwards, and I'm really scared that's going to happen for trans people. A lot of trans people like myself, we go to work, we pay our taxes, we get married, we want to have babies, we just want to live normal lives.
She even says that trans people are attacking womanhood. And in this video, I'd like to just point out that no, we are not. We are reshaping what society should consider womanhood to include. We are not taking anyone's seat at the table. We are getting our own seat and putting it at the table because the table was designed to only have a few people sitting at it, and it's about time that we got to sit down because my legs ache, I'm 34 years old. And if you're going to say, well, no, that's too loud, that's too rowdy, that's too violent, look at history. The table didn't have the original amount of seats that we're trying to add to anyway. There's plenty of room to go around. Now, something really here that broke my heart as well, she also says that trans people have their rights because of women giving them, not the activists that are fighting for them. This is just factually incorrect. Like, I just have to let you know, like, this, whether this is like knowingly incorrect or if this is just misguided, like, this is just not true. Stonewall, there's so many examples. I've either talked about them at this point or they're coming next. In the clip where someone asks to define a woman and then in response someone else very much gives a fair definition of that, we see the exact same thing. Someone is not willing to comprehend that definition.
We move on to one more positive one, so let's do it.
Define woman. Go, please. One of you.
A person who their internal idea of what they are is a woman.
Terrible definition. Coming from a lesbian, that destroys the very concept of our sexual orientation. Just saying that it's an idea.
Why?
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 Because you can't be connected and sexually attracted to somebody's brain.
Positive ones. Good to have that healthy conversation so we can find where we can be with all these different little aspects, the wordings and the terminologies to make everyone feel good, or as many people feel good as possible. That's the important thing. But I think she's fab. I've seen some of her content before. She's very straight to the point, which I love. She's very direct, which I absolutely love.
And it's not because it's verbose, it's because it breaks that person's worldview to a point that they can't quite digest it in that moment. This is what we see all the time. This is the Matt Walshes of the world. Just because the answer isn't what you're expecting doesn't mean it's any less correct. Just factually. And Alexis Blake reacting to this very non-expressively with really not much substance allows that response from the person asking the question to continue on to as if it's the correct one. It's just not. I'm sorry, it's not. Gender is a construct. We know this. So you can't just say, well, what is a woman? It's an adult human female, which I think even at some point Alexis Blake even says to me a woman is an adult human female. Editing me if you can remember where that clip is, put it in here. Ugh.
Do you know what? It's one of the most spicy questions to ask someone, what is the woman? And everyone reacts so different. If you're asking me, adult human female. That's simple to me. With all the gender stuff going on at the minute, a lot of I think it's calming down now, but when they were trying to neutralise all terms to they, and especially around women, breastfeeding, pregnancy, all those terminologies like birther and stuff, and womb carrier. Ooh. When all of those came in, I think people didn't realise that by being inclusive and that person in the video was trying to say a woman is someone who feels like it on the inside. To try and be inclusive, you almost wipe away someone else's existence in the process of doing it, so you are excluding another group of people.
Alexis Blake has also been on a number of podcasts.
Everyone's so curious just to know how it worked and how Liam felt about it, all because we met as two men.
To simply say I'm a straight man now completely erases my entire life and my entire experiences and the things I've done. And she came in dressed as Alexis, and like internally, like it hurt. You're losing the person that you fell in love with. You're gaining someone new.
You grieve them. You have to grieve them.
But on one particular, she's talking about her statistics of her channel, I assume, and the other creator interviewing her is quite shocked to hear that a lot of her audience are female.
But when I see the stats on our podcast and YouTube, it's over
Mostly
60.
men.
I think YouTube is actually 70% men.
Our podcast is 84%
women.
So
84% women.
84% women is ours. How
Isn't it
crazy.
interesting?
I know. Like,
Well,
it's
whoever
wild.
you are, we love
Thank you.
It's just interesting to see the stats.
84% of Alexis Blake's statistics at this point were female as well. Honestly, when I heard that, my instinct was just like, yeah, probably half of the TERFs of the UK right now. Sadly, Buck Angel's included in this selection. And on Buck Angel's podcast, she talks about how trans women are a guest in women's spaces.
If you're going to have a beard and a receding hairline and not show any semblance of transition, you are just looking like a man. You can't expect to walk into a female space and be warmly greeted, because the thing is, and I say this a lot and I think it sometimes bugs people when I say it, but as trans women, we don't have, those spaces weren't made for us. We are guests in those spaces. Women allow us into those spaces.
Well, by that definition, women are a guest in men's spaces, because at one point there wasn't a seat at that table. Women had to claw it. We had the suffragette movement, which was actually quite racist as well at the time, but we'll talk for another video. And women made space in society for themselves that wasn't there before. Trans women are doing the same thing. So, okay, if trans women are guests in women's spaces and women are guests in men's spaces, do you admit that men are at the higher end of this hierarchy? Because that's sexism. And also let's apply that conversation to race, because at one point, slavery happened. There was a civil rights movement in the US in which people of colour had to fight for their rights to sit at the table. By the same definition, is everyone just a guest in everyone's space? And let me guess, is it cis white men at the top? Interesting. The table was made in error. I don't know how long I can run this analogy, but what I'm trying to say is society has been created in error with various constructs that are just wrong. Social constructs that were too simple for the time. Science and society has progressed, but regardless as to where we are, we're only asking for it to continue to progress. And any person in the trans community that's pulling up the ladder behind them and saying, yeah, we have our rights now, you guys don't count, we don't need your help. I mean, that's just cruel. It's just cruel.
Have you ever encountered internalized homophobia, biphobia, transphobia within yourself?
Yes.
Further evidence for this point, I want to look at where Alexis Blake reacts to Dylan Mulvaney. Not my cup of tea, bit too much of a pop banger for me. It's giving the Legally Blonde song at the beginning, you know, like perfect day, and I can't unhear it, so whenever I hear that song I'm just like anyway. Side note, let's come back, let's bring it back. Bring it back.
Whatever Dylan does reflects on all trans women at this point. That's how famous she is now.
Alexis Blake is calling out Dylan Mulvaney for being a stereotype of women. Even uses such a right-wing TERF word, which is like women face or something.
It's not even what she's doing that's offending me, like the whole lingerie, being silly and all camp and everything. It's not that bothers me. What bothers me is that we're at a critical time. I genuinely believe for the trans community, we're going towards trans rights being reversed. I really do believe that. She has been accused of mocking women, playing women face, insulting biological women, being narcissistic, misogynistic, all the different insults, and it's a lot of insults. She hasn't learnt from that, and she's continuing to play into that narrative to reinforce all of that, and that's what bothers me.
Now, this is an innately internalized transphobic point, and has absolutely been taken from the right. This is a TERF talking point. This is a trans exclusionary radical feminist talking point. This is saying that trans women are just pretending to be what they've perceived a woman to be.
It's not like a getting some self-awareness and learning from your actions and maybe singing a song and not prancing around in lingerie. And I get people are going to say to me, well, she's just having a good time and being herself, and that's fair enough. But when being yourself has implications for the whole trans community, I think that's when you need to assess and look in the mirror at your behaviour.
So let's link this back to what we talked about gender being a social construct. Every single person is playing the role of the gender that they perceive it to be. If you lived on Mars and you didn't know that girls allegedly like pink and boys like blue, you would have no idea that that were the case were you not to be taught it. It's physically impossible to just psychically know that a girl is meant to do all of the things in Dylan Mulvaney's song. We as a society group people in certain ways. With terms of gender, we group them as boy and girl, usually from birth, and then, man and woman, usually. With that, we get certain behaviours that are attached to them. Even cisgender women are doing the same thing. Giving them the freedom to do that is what I would say is the main point of feminism. To allow a woman to do whatever she wants. Adhere to certain gender stereotypes if she wants to, and not if she doesn't want to. In effectiveness, you're saying basically do whatever you want. You have autonomy of yourself. Dylan Mulvaney is doing the same.
Again, all these things that Dylan's just singing about, I'm sure, of course, women do. And I do some of them, I'm sure, as well. So that's not, again, what my problem is. But my problem is that in Dylan's TikTok, she's been seen running around in heels and running from bugs and playing into all the negative stereotypes that I think men have created and caricatures that men have created for women. It's almost misogynistic, in my opinion.
You can do something stereotypically female on purpose. I mean, for me to be explaining this to a transgender woman, to me, is just also so ironic, because that's exactly what we're all doing. Alexis Blake has long hair, wears makeup, wears wonderful clothes, is stunningly beautiful, absolutely, because she's adhering to Western beauty standards. So to call out Dylan Mulvaney for being too stereotypically female, to me, is, if not jealousy, then just internalized misogyny and internalized transphobia.
So I always say that I tread very lightly in the world of being a woman, because I don't want to offend or upset or not necessarily tread on people's toes, but I want to be as respectful as possible.
A reason we often, as a trans community, see other trans people punching down, as I'm going to call it, and not giving someone who hasn't finished, in quotes, their transition the space to be happy in their skin, is because we see a lot of ourselves in them, and we see their lack of willingness to blend in with, an issue that will affect us innately. I'm trying to put my head in Alexis Blake's mindset for a second, but if people can stand out and people cause attention, then there are more people that argue for that to not happen. People on the right, people say, hey, just conform, gender conforming, be heteronormative.
You can know who you are and still not like it.
No, I've never felt like that.
You've never once ever not liked being gay or
whatever I am. No, I've always, from the earliest memories I have of being alive, I always knew I am the way I am, and I was very comfortable with it. I never had internalized homophobia. I didn't dislike who I was.
I think that's beautiful, and I love that for you, but that was not the case for me.
Right, all right. Well, it's not a competition.
An example being how Alexis Blake discusses Lily Tino's discussion of the womb transplant. I did a video myself about womb transplants years ago. The technology has been in question, and the trans community has been aware of what that could mean for trans women for a long time now. It's nothing new. Is Lily Tino doing it in a rage-bait, clicky way? Yes, of course she is. That's all she does.
In the past 10 years, 50 babies have been born from a uterus transplant.
From biological women. That's the thing. A uterus transplant on a trans woman has never been done successfully. One of the earliest cases of one of the first trans women to medically transition, I can't remember her name right now, sorry. What was her name? No, it's gone. It's what the film The Danish Girl is based on. She had a uterine transplant and died because the body rejected it.
Alexis specifically mentioned herself about the person that The Danish Girl was based on. The surgery to get a quality of life as a woman that we are now didn't exist 100 years ago in our culture. But it does now for us, and it makes our lives better, and it's something that many of us opt into. Not everyone, we don't have to, fair enough, that conversation's to the side for a second. Why would we take away the potential for womb transplants to be on that list down the line? Why are we pulling up the ladder? Hell, I would get a womb transplant if it was safe and I could have the child safely without the same amount of risk as a cis woman at least. I would get that done tomorrow. We wouldn't have the surgeries and the potential to transition in the ways we can now if it weren't for medical intervention the progression of technology, and for societal understanding to what transgender means. So to be living in the privileges of this modern time, in which you have a large arsenal of ways to change your gender to match your biological sex, I can't understand why you wouldn't want to further that advancement.
So it's less about if we can do it and more about when we can do it. Imagine a trans woman using her own DNA along with her partner's egg to create life. Wouldn't that be incredible? Some researchers think...
How would me and Liam do it then? Because I don't have an egg, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't have any eggs. Sorry. Oh, again. And I would love nothing more to be able to carry children, but obviously I can't. I'm a trans woman. It really bugs me that she is talking so lightly about this topic of just getting uterus transplant and then you can have kids. I'm like, but it's a really incredibly risky, dangerous surgery.
But I am in a very similar position to Alexis Blake. I would love to be able to have biological children. I would love to be able to have children with my husband, not because that's what society wants me, but that's because what we want together. But if we can't, we will adopt, in the same way Alexis has said about her and Liam. And I wish them nothing but the best. I would like to remind everyone, though, that the potential for a womb transplant in the future is going to mean a better quality of life for trans women and their potential kids and families in the future, if that's what they want. The option should be there for them. Just like the option for surgeries is here for us and other trans people that it wasn't once before.
Again, a trans woman stood there with a baby bump saying trans women can nearly get pregnant. Of course, that is going to go viral. It really would. If anyone did that who is trans, it would go viral because it's a very hot topic. It's very controversial. It rubs people the wrong way.
So for Lily Tino to get so much transphobic hatred because of her non-passing situations or her clickbaity situations, that hate that we see, it mirrors what we've had before and that affects us personally. However, the reason that there is a segment between two communities of who wants to assimilate and who wants to be passing and who doesn't want anyone else to not be gender conforming, which is another very different line, and those who don't care about conforming to gender, and that's why we have non-binary people in the trans umbrella, is because not everyone can. So now is where I want to talk about Western white supremacist beauty standards. If I haven't lost you before, then I won't lose you now. So what do I mean by that? Well, some cis women have facial hair. In a lot of cultures, like in India, in Turkish cultures, it is a thing that happens. So to say that as a trans woman, you having facial hair makes you not look like a woman is also sexist and racist to those other women. In the same vein, not all women have breasts. Breasts are famously very much different sizes. Not all women can have children. Cis women, trans women, that isn't necessarily something that every cis woman is born with the ability to do. And also I would say that furthering that conversation is that women shouldn't be considered as just baby making machines. In the same way that J.K. Rowling will argue that if you have XY chromosome, then you will always be male, scientifically, that's incorrect. There are several people that are outside of the binary of male and female biologically. So when you say, as a trans woman, male to female, you have to have, long hair, not have any facial hair, you must wear makeup and stuff, you are adhering to Western beauty standards. And I mean Western because in other cultures, it's not always the same. That correlates to forcing other people to do the same. It's actually misogynistic to assume that all women have to have certain beauty standards, otherwise their femaleness, their womanness is taken away from them. And we've seen this happen to cis women because of this anti-trans movement in sports as well. There are cisgender women that have naturally, from birth, just a higher level of testosterone in their bodies, and that means they can't compete against other cisgendered women because of the anti-trans movement happening. This can also happen predominantly in women of colour who have naturally just different biological elements. There are other cultures that do too. There is actually a number of white cis women that looked into their own chromosomes and found out they actually haven't got the same chromosomes that they thought as a woman should have, and so they just kind of stopped looking. It's far more complex than two biological sexes and nothing else. It really is, scientifically. You can listen to that, not believe me, or you can go and do your own research. So if I can get any message across, I want it to be this. Specifically to people like Alexis Blake, trans women in the community that don't feel like they deserve to take the title of woman and that they're taking up space in cis women's society. Every human being deserves the right to live how they want to live. I fundamentally believe that.
So I always thought that with watching trans women's content, you know, like when we see trans women screaming or talking about getting pregnant or breastfeeding or the outrageous stuff, I could never like understand that on like a human level. Like I could never find, you know, when you find the similarities with someone, I could never do that. And maybe it's because they're AGP. I don't know.
In another one of Alexis's videos, she responds to whether she believes people are trans women or autogenophiles. I don't even know the term. Because quite frankly, it's just a right-wing talking point to deny the identity of a certain minority of people.
The differentiation between AGP and trans is clear. And I think if we take a step back and like, if you think about any of the videos you've seen online, for instance, any of the outrageous trans videos where it rubbed you the wrong way or it made you uncomfortable or it made you question trans people or it gave trans women a bad name. Any of those videos, like, am I just assigning them to that group so that I can not associate with them under the trans label? Maybe. I don't know. And maybe like that's my own subconscious doing that. But part of me is kind of like, I get it. And there's nothing wrong with having a fantasy or exploring your own identity in whatever way you want. I can't sit here and judge and tell anyone what to do because I've explored my life and how I wanted to present to the world. But what I would say is that if it makes other people feel uncomfortable, I think that's where a line needs to be drawn.
I'm not for any crimes or any inappropriate behaviour across the board. But that doesn't mean we get to decide who we perceive to be trans women or cis men that fetishize wearing dresses. If no inappropriate behaviour has taken place to people that don't consent to it, that's none of our business.
It's just crazy to me. How many videos have we seen Lily Tino talking about pregnancy, getting uterus transplants and all these things? And I'm just sort of thinking in my head, wow, like that is so in line with this theory. Again, it's not proven and I don't want to say it is, but I understand where the theory comes from.
Pushing that opinion on people that we see in the public is a very dangerous behaviour to participate in.
Another one is engaging in female behaviour, so living their life as a female, trying to female behaviour like getting the hair cut, very stereotypical things, applying makeup, going shopping, all of that sort of thing.
Alexis has shown us that there was a period of her life where she didn't pass and it was a transition, that's why we call it such. So she knows more than anyone that is a process.
Me and Liam met 4 years ago. He met me as a man, he proposed to me as a man, and we started building a life together and planning a future together whilst I was still a man. He supported me through all of the staring and the comments from people earlier on in my transition. A lot of trans people, when they transition, their relationships can end because of it, and ours has just got stronger and better.
I can handle quite a lot, I'm a really strong person. But someone I know from before I transitioned and became me, I think they've told people. And now they're all talking about me and saying really nasty things.
So to then go on to judge people that aren't in her eyes passing because they don't do the things that she determines that make them woman enough is innately prejudiced. It's saying you have to look at a certain criteria that I perceive you to be good enough, and if you don't, I'm going to categorize you as something else. That's a very dangerous line to walk on, isn't it? What if we did that with everything else? And plot twist, that's the history we've come from and grown from. And the reason we have grown from that history of judging people based on their appearance and skin colour and race and gender is because of activists, those extreme activists that might be a bit loud and rowdy at times, fighting for their seat at the table. We are not guests. We are sitting at the same table because we are all humans.
As a man, absolutely was misogynistic. I know I was. And I hate admitting that. I hate it so much, but it is so true.
So anyway, that was some more of Alexis Blake's takes. And if this is the issue of the extreme trans activists that are such a problem on the left, I can't wait to hear what Alexis Blake thinks about people like J.K. Rowling on the right, where she gets a lot of her talking points, whether she knows it or not. So this next video is going to do that. Bear in mind, it was when JK just started tweeting, just got access to a bloody mobile phone and started tweeting out her thoughts. So let's give credit to Alexis with that in mind. However, I think this is an important clip to see the context of where we are today. I'm filming this a couple days after the original script and the original filming I did before, because I have an amendment to make. Alexis Blake's content is so dangerous, even I, who is doing a deep dive and video essay on her content, misunderstood a certain thing.
Dress however you please, call yourself whatever you like, sleep with any consenting adult who will have you, live your best life in peace and security, but force women out of their jobs for stating that sex is real? ? Is that transphobic? Do you think that has a strong prejudice against transgender people?
In this podcast episode, Liam and Alexis are talking about whether they consider J.K. Rowling to be transphobic. And in the episode itself, they use J.K. Rowling's initial, somewhat ambiguous tweet, which it was before 2020. I believe it was even 2019. And this was so far back that I thought that the podcast itself had to have been older than it was.
So that tweet that J.K. Rowling put out there was in follow-up from someone called Maya Fawcett getting fired from her job. The reason she got fired was because she said biological sex is real. That is why she got fired.
Okay.
There's a little bit more into it.
Right.
Which
you believe biological sex is real?
Biological sex is very real.
Because it is real,
Because it's science. It's very, very simple.
It turns out that podcast aired on the 16th of February 2024. 2 years ago from now. J.K. Rowling, subsequent to that, has done a number of overtly transphobic things, including opening Baylor's Place, the trans-exclusionary safe place for cis women that I covered, one of the first videos I covered on my channel several years ago, a few years ago at least.
I don't think she is attacking trans people by saying that. She's just having a political conversation about what is going on in the world right now. And it seems like anyone who has a political conversation about these sorts of things gets deemed and labelled a TERF and a transphobe. I've been called TERF before, for any of those.
I don't think that really makes
I have been called it, though. That's what J.K. Rowling's getting labelled as well, because she's just saying that, of course, trans people deserve equal rights and to be seen and valid. However, we can't infringe on biological women, what's already there. And I think that's valid. Like, the backlash, the aftermath from these tweets that she said, there's been a couple of other bits, but very similar sort of caliber. But the aftermath was people were burning Harry Potter books. There's been a couple of other bits, but very similar sort of caliber.
To use J.K. Rowling's initial tweet about biological sex to justify whether you think she's transphobic or not is outright deceitful at this point. And again, this video, I just kind of stumbled upon it. And that's how dangerous this content can be.
I do not believe, and I do not agree that she is transphobic. J.K. Rowling is not transphobic, in my opinion. Do I understand why people might have been upset by some of the things that she said? I do.
Yeah. And I believe that maybe she did ride the train a little bit and be
but she didn't help herself in some aspects.
That's what I mean,
but I do not think she's been painted to be this evil person, troll. And it's not true.
No, I don't.
And I think it's so harmful because at the end of the day, she is a human being. She feels things. She will see all the nasty stuff posted online.
So let's look at Alexis Blake's response to the UK Supreme Court ruling that transgender women are not women. Surely she will make the connection that J.K. Rowling had very much a lot to do with that, if not bankrolled that entire endeavour, and that will be part of her analysis, as any trans woman in the community.
Trans women are now not legally recognised as a woman. This new law isn't going to protect or help anyone. People can now stop and say to you, you don't look like a woman to me. Are you a biological man? Women are going to have that. I'm sick of being blamed for men's behaviour time and time again. A man doesn't have to put on a dress and a wig to go into a woman's space and do something bad. They can do it anyway. Also, something else I want to point out, they want us to use the toilets that aligns with our biological sex. So trans men, women who transition to men, look very much like men. Beards, you would never know. So that means they should then use the women's toilet, which means men can just walk in and say, I'm a trans man. I was born a woman. I should have been here. It's not making anyone safer. Hi. A fire has been lit in me by this blatant discrimination against trans women. This really sucks. Bye.
No. We see the clip. She reacts to it because it personally affects her and she's devastated by it, as we all were. She, however, is missing vital information to the fact that J.K. Rowling very much had a lot to do with this, and so did all of the TERFs in her network. It's not the trans activists, the loud people that are taking away your rights, Alexis. It's the TERFs. And how did J.K. Rowling manage to do that? What exactly did she use to fund that? Well, a certain game comes to mind. Heaven forbid you know anything about this game, Alexis?
Remember when the Harry Potter game came out, what you said to me?
Yeah, I asked your permission if I could buy it.
That's crazy. Because of what?
Well, because leading up to the release of the game, it was getting tarnished by the whole anti-trans movement. And me and my best friend Beth, hi Beth, we were looking forward to the game, and we started to feel like guilty because we wanted to buy it. We've been looking forward to it for years. It's been in development for 4 or 5 years. So I said to Alexis, "Do you mind if I buy it?" And she was like, "No, babe, not at all." So I was like, "Okay, cool." So we bought it and we enjoyed it. But you know, at the end of the day, 4 or 5 years worth of hard work by the studio went into making this game. Hundreds of people were involved. It was only towards the back end of when it was getting released that all this anti-trans stuff came about. So
what about J.K. Rowling?
You know, all these people were saying, if you buy the game, you're transphobic. Well, clearly I'm not transphobic. I bought the game, I loved the game, and my partner is a trans woman. So clearly I'm not transphobic, am I?
In that clip, we see that Liam, her husband, asked her if it was okay, so therefore he's aware that there is some stigma towards it, understands about the boycott, which means they're aware of at least the conversation that was happening, and she saw nothing wrong with it happening. So he bought the game. He funded her rights being taken away. That's what listening to the right wing does. That's what the right wing talking points are for, to take our rights away. It's not the loud activists that have blue hair and that are shouting on TikTok, darling. Those are the people that are fighting to keep the rights that we have left. So Blair White actually reacted to Alexis Blake. We've gone full circle, people. And in that, Blair White is actually quite complimentary of Alexis Blake. Shocking.
I've seen a few of her YouTube videos, and I know that she's a supporter of mine, and I think she's pretty cool. And so I thought, you know, seeing her thumbnail, she's obviously very upset.
And we also see Blair White say that, like, I know it affects you, sorry about that, but it is going to keep cis women safe. It is important that this happens.
I actually do think this is going to help women. Sometimes you have to bring things down to perspective.
To have a trans person saying, like, no, your rights being taken away is the way forward. It keeps a certain cis woman safe. That's absolutely anti-trans rhetoric. I mean, that's insane. I would expect that of Matt Walsh. She even says,
right, like no one even who sees your gender marker. I guess if you're like going into clubs, you know, a bouncer at a club, but like I remember having an M for a while at the very start of mine, and like they're not zooming in on what letter the M or F is, like in the corner. Like it's just not as big of a deal as I think people are making it out to be.
Now, it might not make a difference to you two white ladies because the majority of hate crime and violent crime happens to trans women of colour and non-white trans people. But B, look at where we are even from that point. In Kansas now, just recently, there is a new ruling in which trans people have to have ID that matches their biological gender, their gender at birth. So there is a huge wave of people having their ID either taken away or they're being fined for this. At the same time, Trump is very worried about how much he's going to lose the midterms, and he's doing various things to ensure that the voting goes his way. Whether that be employing ICE, whether that be giving ICE the right to pinpoint and make certain actions towards trans people, or whether it be arming ICE more than they already are.
Trump's ICE is quietly stockpiling weaponry, and it should alarm us all. He is going to use ICE, who we now know, according to the New Republic, is stockpiling weapons. And I want you to think about the insanity of this. The federal government is stockpiling weapons to use against its own citizens. Elections are non-negotiable.
Not as big of a deal as I think people are making it out to be.
Trump is doing everything he can to make sure that the woke libs don't have access to voting in the polls. This is where centralist leads. This is why we are at fascism. Because you get the token transgender people in the community saying that it's not going to affect you, it's fine, everything gets pulled to the right, people's rights get taken away, and look at where we are. So, again, expecting Alexis to have this breakthrough moment where she realizes, well, hold on, this even affects me personally, so maybe this isn't the best for the community, even if she is unable to look at things from a wider scale. Surely her reaction to Blair White will be at least adversary.
And yes, the rights of the crazies are getting taken away, and it's to protect women, but then also the rights of genuine trans women are getting taken away, and that's the difference. And now the ruling is in place. Obviously, I have my feelings on it. What I will say is I hope it does make women safer. I can see how someone could agree with both points of this, if you know what I mean. I hope it goes to show that this just proves that you can have different opinions to people on certain things, and then like me and Blair, we'll probably agree on a lot of things as well. But having that conversation is so much more valuable, and I think a lot more is accomplished from that than when certain people have tried to drag me down because one of my opinions is different to theirs.
And that's the reason we are where we are.
Even though I have read it all and I understand where the argument can come from, my opinion is still that non-binary and trans are very separate and they're very different, and that's fine.
There's a little saying we have on the left, let me know if you've heard it, but if you scratch a centralist, a fascist bleeds. Sorry to explain the joke, but because of the potential audience of this video, I just want to double check. Taking so many centralist points of view innately feeds into the right wing and the fascistic talking point that are the reason we are here today. When reacting to the Blair White and Blossom situation, Alexis Blake talks about violent activism.
Blossom is claiming to be a trans activist to help people, to help younger people accept who they are and to move forward trans rights, but to show a side of aggression and that you agree with aggression and that is who you are as a person, I don't think falls in line with an activist. I am kind of getting to a point where I am sick of seeing trans activists online because so much of the time trans activists do not create a good representation of the trans community, and these activists are supposed to be bettering our rights, getting us seen as equal human beings, just normalising being trans, which is all a nice idea in theory. But when we actually see these trans activists like Blossom in action, in a debate, that's not how I want to be perceived.
When a white woman says a black woman is aggressive, it has this tone of, it's like almost like a threat. It's innately a threat.
Yeah, what I've noticed is that it's like something they pull, like just like kind of like when white women do the white woman tears thing. They pull the you're aggressive because they don't have nothing. Kind of like it's always in an instance when there's a conversation of truth being brought in, there's nuance or whatnot, then the white person feels like they're losing the debate, they're going to reach for that. And it's something they've been doing historically forever because they think that's a conversation ender. It's a way to tap out without looking at how bad they're doing. Because it really is the mediocre white people that reach for that the most, because they can't stand on 10 toes or go toe to toe on the argument, on the talking point. So if they're reaching for that, it usually just means that like they have nothing of substance to add if they're reaching for racial stereotypes.
Honestly, the way you've just summed up Alexis Blake to a T as well.
I enjoyed this debate for what it was. You know, it was quite ugly at certain points, and I wish that it was all trans people on the panel because that would have been more appropriate and more fitting.
Wow. You're so offensive. You're an offensive person, human being.
Okay. Well, I find a lot of things over here offensive as well.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're disgusting.
And trust me, the feeling is more than mutual.
From what we just watched, obviously Alex called Blair disgusting when Blair was talking about only wanting to have trans people on the panel because it is a trans debate, and Alex is not trans, Alex is non-binary, and that's just Blair's opinion.
And in the same vein, let's talk about non-binary people. The minute we start pulling up that ladder and saying that they don't fall under the category of transgender, in my opinion, then we do the same thing that right-wing gay people are doing when they say trans people don't fall under the same category as LGBT. We want to cut the T and keep it LGB. That sexuality and gender identity are disconnected. Why are we putting them together? They're making us look bad. Are we noticing a pattern by any chance? The gays don't want to be associated with the trans people because they're too extreme. The trans people don't want to be associated with the non-binary people because they're too extreme. Leftist cooks put it better than I will ever be able to. But there is two veins of non-heteronormative, non-cis people that have existed in society. Those that want to assimilate and pretend that they're going to be just the same as their heteronormative counterparts. And those that say, hey, why should I have to do that actually? Maybe I don't want to do that. And then also there's also the category, that can't do that anyway because of intersectionality, which, me talking again from my privileged point of view of someone that can choose to do that. There are people out there that can't. They can't act a certain way that is considered normal for them in society. And Alexis Blake is an example of someone that can, chooses to, and thinks everyone else should. And anyone that doesn't fit within the heteronormative elements of life should just be quiet and just hush, quieten themselves. For me, the hypocrisy there is that a few years ago, nay decades, you would have been asked to not transition, stay as a boy, and live your life unhappily for the rest of your life. How can we not make the connection to not asking people to do that as well? And the reason that we don't want to cut the letters off of the LGBTQIA plus community, or as Liam calls it, the
LGBT alphabet. I'm just going to say alphabet.
Yeah, it's getting a bit long.
Yeah.
Is because as a community, to some extent, we have all felt a similar strain of this oppression and this push towards being heteronormative, white normative, and all of these things. We all understand that each other's plights are different, but at the same point, we are all in a certain version of the oppression. As someone that watched their rights get rolled back by the UK Supreme Court, I can't understand what's not clicking.
Is the Gen Z population,
The
or
newer
the
generation.
newer generation, are the newer generation of LGBT members,
Yeah, I'd say that.
are they soft, basically? Are they dealing with things that to anyone else we just be like, get over it?
I think there's a line, isn't there?
Here we actually see Alexis Blake and Liam talk about previous generations and the struggles that they went through, which is obviously terrible. We all agree with that.
So to transition 40, 50 years ago, very few doctors would even, like, they'd laugh you out of the office. Like, seriously, or they'd call the police on you because you're committing a crime, because obviously two men together was a crime back then.
Yeah, it was.
What year was it?
Well, in the UK, it was illegal to have an intimate relationship with someone of the same sex up until 1969.
As far as I am aware, I think it was 1962 when in America, that's when they started to decriminalise same-sex intimate relations.
How can we put that progression down to the women that we're now in their space? Why can we not see that the activism is what brought us here?
A lot of the stuff we see online, it's almost laughable at points, because it's just like, look back at what those trans women, those gay men, those lesbians, what did they do? What did they have to go through? Like that comment said, running down the street because they thought they was going to get severely hurt. They went through that so we could live our lives now in peace. And I think it's just, where's the respect gone? I don't think there is it, to be honest.
The reason the L is at the beginning of LGBT is, I believe, because the lesbian community looked after the gay community in the AIDS crisis, because they were the only people that would. Imagine if the lesbians had pulled up the ladder behind them and said, well, I mean, I'm not the same as a gay guy, so I don't really care what happens. Imagine if they'd done that. Remind me again why non-binary people don't count within the transgender community, under the transgender umbrella. Any evidence, any understanding, any analysis? Or are we just going to take the centralist point? And to me, for someone that is very aware of previous generations and how far we've come as a community to have the rights we do.
Trans women, for instance, in the 80s, if you didn't pass, you would be attacked and abused and end up in prison. So compared to like looking at a trans woman in 2024 who screams about getting misgender, and you just like look, like grab a history book, look back at what they had to deal with. It does kind of sometimes make me think that, but then
it rings kind of hollow that Alexis Blake doesn't understand that we got those rights from the activism, if not violent activism, of generations before us. Stonewall, famously one of the reasons why the LGBTQIA plus community has the rights we do today, or at least the beginning of the wave that incurred that situation for us, was very much a riot. And it was Marsha P. Johnson, that lived from 1945 to 1992, that was a woman of colour, a trans woman of colour, at the forefront of the Stonewall riot. And it's because of people like her, legends in our community, that we have the ability to be sitting here now in front of a camera and not worry for our lives. That we have the scientific progression that's allowed for us to have various surgeries and get them accessibly through our, if not negligent, but still existent healthcare system and government system that supports trans people. It gave us a society in which being trans is okay, that being gay is okay. But that didn't happen because we all sat down in a field and started talking about our feelings. It happened because we forced a seat at the table. We've seen through history that activism that can be violent and disruptive is the direct action that gives us the result of equal rights. At the very least, not having our rights taken away. Like we saw recently If you take the right-wing point of view and the left-wing point of view, you can't find a happy medium, because more often than not, one side of the argument is, hey, I don't want you to have your rights for no apparent reason other than it makes me feel uncomfortable what you're doing. And the other side of the argument is, well, I don't care, I'm just living my life as I see fit and it doesn't affect you, nor should you care, so leave me be. This centralist argument of that is, okay, hey, you both have a point, when they don't. One of them is in the wrong and one of them is in the right, and we need to be able to call it out.
People are so stubborn to learn and to listen and try and maybe challenge their own opinions. That's the hard thing to do as a human. I said in a video, non-binary people are not trans, and I'm not going to change my mind on that, it's just my opinion. However, I've read some comments about non-binary people sometimes take hormones and they sometimes have surgeries, and I'm just thinking, oh, Alexis, okay, that was your opinion. Read this information and absorb it and just try and process it and then reform my opinion. And even though I have read it all and I understand where the argument can come from, that non-binary people sometimes do these things to be their true self and their authentic self, I appreciate that, but my opinion is still that non-binary and trans are very separate and they're very different, and that's fine.
So the reason some of us don't want to cut away our counterparts in the community, regardless as to whether we're talking about sexual orientation or identity or race or anything, is because we are stronger together. That's the only way I can put it. And also, I will be really, really clear when I say the reason you have the rights you have now, the reason that any of the LGBTQI plus community have the rights they have now, is because of people that fought against the heteronormative state to get them.
Grab a history book.
Stonewall was a riot. And while I'm at it, the fascistic issue, let's bring back that clip of Alexis reacting to Blossom, an amazing human being.
Excuse me, I'm speaking. Do not interrupt a black trans woman when she's speaking.
You've interrupted me hella times.
When it comes to isms,
did the interrupter just say
if you
use
are
your
black,
skin tone
if
to
you
say
are
you couldn't
black,
interrupt her?
if you are, how dare you sit up here and say
no,
that?
it's disrespectful for you to
Mr. White, hold on, just a second.
It's getting a bit much. It's getting a bit much. Rewatching that, I didn't like what Blossom said. Just the energy, the sass. It really makes me uncomfortable when people speak and act like that. Do not interrupt me. Oh, I can't even do.
Let's talk a little bit about misogyny and microaggressions. I first learned about the BLM movement at Trans Pride. I saw people with banners that said Black Lives Matter, and I had to admit to myself that I didn't really know as much about that as I wanted to. And I realised there's an entire societal injustice happening, and that's where I learned it's not just about me. And I just think that Alexis hasn't quite learnt that lesson yet. And to her, everything is just about her, the plight of trans women, and it stops there.
Do not interrupt me. Oh, I can't even do it. Oh my gosh. The behaviour is just so gross to watch. I don't know how I would ever be in that situation. Like, it must be hard to stay calm when you're faced off with someone who is getting so aggressive and angry and loud. And I don't know how I would handle that myself. I think everyone in the room who was opposing Blossom's opinions did a very good job at not getting to that point where she was.
To call Blossom sassy is an unintellectual mistake that I'm still shocked that people make. And that's giving grace to Alexis that she did it as a mistake, unknowingly, that is a racist dog whistle. To call a woman of colour, a trans woman of colour, too angry, too rowdy is racist. Anyone that is saying, well, no, that's not necessarily racist.
Grab a history book.
Because it links to an entire history of stereotypes and microaggressions that white people used to make against people of colour specifically. And it's our responsibility as people that are aware of that and trying to educate ourselves to not use such language. And I'm giving Alexis grace here that she didn't know that could be perceived as a microaggression to someone. But I mean, that's so much grace at this point in the video to be giving that I almost feel stupid saying it. Hey, how about we just don't call black people sassy anymore? Like, is that crazy? Does that make me woke? Does that make me woke auntie? Then if so, so be it. Pick up a book.
Grab a history book.
What would you say to someone that watches that and says like, oh, she didn't mean it like that. She doesn't know that sass and aggression and calling a woman of colour sassy or aggressive is a dog whistle. Like, what would you say to someone that claims that ignorance?
I would say you might want to diversitize your media then and take. I would probably tell them to understand, do you know what tokenism is? Because clearly what they're doing is they're tokenizing a trans person against another trans person that's Black, and that's the goal. I mean, tokenism is a weapon of white supremacy. There's a lot that you would have to look into within yourself if you're over here falling for old 2016 rage bait talking points, trying to rage, like, you can't rage, like, nowadays you can't even rage bait Black women, Black American women by calling us aggressive. We're like, oh really, we're aggressive now. Like, we make jokes out of it now when they try to pull that. So if they're falling for that now, then I'm sorry, honey, I can't save you. You gotta read a book. I don't know.
It's true, but
I think that's it for this section. There is just one thing else on my mind, that there is primarily 3 things that need correcting in society that are systematically unfair: white supremacy, capitalism, and patriarchy. All of these 3 things put rich, cis, white men at the top. So they're just different forms of how that happens, why that is the status quo, and why we have to work to break it. For me, I have the least patience for someone that is aware of a section of this and ignores the rest. To me, that's worse than someone that is unaware of the whole thing. I have more forgiveness for someone that is unaware of the whole thing. They haven't had any reason in their life, in their material situation, to say, actually, that's injustice. Actually, maybe I don't like that. For someone that has, and through some reason in their life realised, actually, this is an injustice and isn't fair. Me being treated differently because I'm a woman now is sexist, isn't it, in society? Maybe that's a problem. For those people to not be able to apply that to other cultures, races, genders, identities, religions, to me is selective unintelligence, let's call it. And if we were to all do that, we wouldn't have the progress that we have today. I fear this video is going to be very... what's the word? Judgy. I should also take a moment to say, if you like this content, please check out my other stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And I have a Patreon, and you can join as a member on YouTube if you want to support the channel. That would be really great. But I'm not going to focus too much on that because there's bigger fish to fry. If you're a regular viewer of my content and you find this video to be a little bit too negative, then I apologise. We'll get back to regularly scheduled happy programming.
Positive ones.
But I did want to sit down and have this conversation because I do think there is a danger to the content that Alexis Blake is putting out and other people like her. So I think there are valid reasons to have this conversation. I've tried to be fair. I've tried to not be too cruel in my responses. And if I have got a little bit too emotional, it's because I do see myself in Alexis Blake. Let me be really clear. I had the similar upbringing and education to Alexis Blake. And honestly, if I didn't go to a certain protest in the BLM movement, I probably would have turned out a lot more like her. I see myself in her probably more than I'm willing to admit, which is why I have the ability to be critical. I would like to think, passing trans woman who lives stealth in the middle of Japan, unless people can understand the fucking stuff I'm talking about right now through my walls, who married a cis guy who loves me and is living my best trans life, I could be so closer to what she is. I could pull up the ladder behind me. I could just ignore the injustices that are heartbreaking to see. But I didn't, and I can't. So I'm calling it out when I see it. Alexis Blake, if you do see this, and you do watch till the end, I am still open to have those conversations. Physically, just us two, in DMs, on a call, off camera, on camera, whatever you want. We can have a talk. I know I've said a lot of things. I know I've reacted to a lot of your content. But I'm doing so because I think some of the centralist takes, where you listen to both sides, is leaning right and also is harmful. And I also see you as the woman you are, and I would love for you to have the self-love that you deserve. You're a woman. You deserve to be treated as one in society. And if that means changing society to wrap around you and conceive that, then let's do that. It's been done for far less. I love you, girl. Take care of yourself. But also, let's stop putting out bad information into the world. Blair White is not your friend. If you did watch to the end, I really, really appreciate you, especially considering how long this video was. Please consider subscribing and all that stuff. I'm really not going to do that for this video because it just doesn't seem really relevant. I did just drop my script as well. It's like a sign. It's like, wrap it up, girl. Wrap. Check out my other stuff if you want to. Otherwise, have a wonderful day. I love you all so much and take care of yourselves. Until next time. Bye. Did I dye my hair just for this video because I didn't want someone to react to me with roots? Absolutely, yes, I did.